family, welcome to the Cultivate podcast. I'm your host, Lorelco Mulzac, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you are riding with me. Before we get into everything, I need you to go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and click that like button, comment, review. Do all the things because I really believe, I'm a firm believer that this podcast is going to transform your life. That's it. I know it because I feel like God has created a transformation in me that I just have to share what it is that God's given me to give it right back to you. And this platform has given me the opportunity to do that. And so we're going to get right into this thing. Listen, Cultivate. So I went from socially awkward podcasts. That was during the pandemic because I feel like we were all in a socially awkward position where we couldn't talk, we couldn't, um, you know, social distancing was a thing. We couldn't hang out, and it was a depressing time for a lot of people. And I felt that I needed to connect with that audience, connect with those who felt socially awkward. And now I'm in a space where I'm just not in that season anymore. I feel like God has pivoted me to another season where we're no longer in a socially awkward position. I just feel that we are now in a season of cultivation. And some of us need to be in a season of cultivation. I was driving one day. I looked at my wife, just looking at my kids and just thinking about my life. And God dropped his word in my spirit. And I knew it was God because I really wasn't thinking about it too heavy. He said, cultivate. At that time, I didn't know what that meant. And I told my wife, I said, I don't know what this word means. I don't know what it means to me. He just told me cultivate. And so I was just driving, man. And over some period of months, I didn't know what to do with that word. So I forgot about it. And then I went on a 21-day fast, sugar fast. And all of a sudden, man, God just began to drop these nuggets and drop this vision and drop this. I mean, my God, it was crazy. He dropped this huge idea in my mind about cultivate. And I was like, God, what does this mean? Have you ever got a dream or a vision that you felt was too big for you? That's what it felt for me. I was like, this cultivate is too big because I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of things I'm about to implement and put in place just from this podcast alone. Because it's going to transform your life. I'm going to help you cultivate your life. But either case, so I'm here and God just starts to deposit so many different things during this fast about cultivation and what it means and what I'm supposed to do with that and how God's been cultivating my life and I didn't even know it. And God was like, cultivate, man, do everything dealing with cultivation. I was like, God, what does this mean? What? I don't get it. And so he told me to look at the definition between cultivate and tilling. And so I was like, okay, what does cultivation mean and what does tilling mean? What do farmers do? What's the difference between the two? And God dropped this on my spirit as I did some research as well. He told me the difference between what people love to do versus what people need to do. He said a lot of people love to till the ground. And tilling is about laboring. If you look at the definition of tilling, it's about breaking the ground, breaking a large plot of land, breaking ground, breaking acres and acres of land. But if you look at cultivation, it's about breaking the soil on a smaller plot of land, a smaller garden, so to speak, something that is not so massive. But a lot of people, we enjoy tilling the ground because of the large output we get from tilling. We enjoy tilling the ground because we can get a bigger return. And so a lot of us are laboring constantly. We're constantly laboring, constantly working, constantly tilling the ground, breaking the soil so that we can get a larger return. And while we're breaking the ground, we are neglecting a smaller portion of ourselves that has a larger impact than the output that we're trying to receive from tilling the ground. That's called cultivation. I was like, man, this is interesting. What does this really mean to me? And so I began to think about cultivation and what that really means. If it's about breaking soil on a smaller plot of land, more like a garden or something like that, well, what's like synonymous or what's similar to a garden? I would say a heart. I would say it's something in this area, your soul, your mind. That's something that begins to grow or die depending on what you put in it. And so I just began to think about what it meant for me in my life about cultivation, cultivating my heart versus tilling the ground to get bread. And in the Bible talks about tilling. Every time it mentions tilling, it's always connected to a resource. It's always brought back with bread or a resource. So I took that into account. I'm like, I've been tilling the ground for a long time so I can get a resource. I've been tilling the ground. I've been working this ground a long time so that I can get some bread, so I can get, the connections and the network, and I can get the money. I can get the bag. I've been tilling the ground a long time, but I have neglected to cultivate my heart. I have neglected cultivating my mind and cultivating my spirit, my soul. I haven't really dived deep into how to be self-aware with myself to grow, to really grow. I'm worried about the bag. I should be worried about how to grow and how to be self-aware with my emotions and with my weaknesses and my flaws. That's what cultivation is about. And what I learned about cultivation and tilling is that they use two totally different types of equipment. Cultivation, when those who are cultivating, they use a smaller type of equipment to till and to break the ground. Whereby tilling, use a larger type of equipment to till a larger piece of land, which requires more work. And cultivation, it doesn't require as much work, but we prefer to till. We prefer to do more work than to actually cultivate with something a little smaller and delicate. It's too easy. It can't be that easy. But we neglect the easy because we want to do the hard things. I want to do the hard things because I get a bigger return from the hard things. That's what we think. That's a myth. That is what we think. That's what we do. Come on now. I can't be alone in this. I cannot be alone. I can't be the only one who works constantly to try to get a return all the time. Like stressed out because I've been working and laboring so hard just so that I can make sure my family good. My kids are good, trying to do all these different things. And in the meantime, I'm neglecting my heart. In the meantime, I'm neglecting me. I'm neglecting God because I'm so busy tilling the ground, trying to get the larger equipment. And God says, do you have your Bible? Where your Bible at? Where's my Bible? What that got to do with anything? Get your Bible and read. Cultivate your mind, cultivate your spirit. Because you won't be able to handle the big thing if you're not managing the small things. You're not going to be able to manage the big plot of land and the resource that comes from it if you have not cultivated your heart. If you have not become self-aware of your weaknesses and your flaws, if you have not spent time with me to grow and to develop and to process yourself. Cultivation requires nurturing. In order to nurture, you have to develop something. It requires time. Process requires time. You have to put in work to cultivate something, even though it's small. You have to put in work. And it's a very delicate piece of work. You have to be delicate with your heart. That's why the Bible talks about, Lord, take the stony heart out of me and give me a heart of flesh. A heart of flesh that can be molded. Too many of us are walking around with stony hearts. Can't nobody talk to you. You mad all the time. You upset. You always stressed out. You always anxious. Can't nobody, you always go popping off at people, but you have a stony heart. And it's hard for you to be vulnerable. It's hard for you to be transparent. It's hard for you to be honest because of your heart is stony. God's like, yo, I need you to have a heart of flesh. That requires cultivation. You got to break that up. You got to break up that stony heart so that you can create a heart of flesh, so that you can be molded, so that I can do some things inside of you. So cultivation is really about God molding you. It's really about him processing you and nurturing you and growing you. And that's the biggest piece of our life, is that we do not develop personally, spiritually, or even in our business because we lack cultivation. We're so busy tilling the ground. We're so busy working to try to get the money, trying to get the bag, trying to get the resource, trying to get the bread. We're so busy. We don't take the time to really evaluate what's in our heart. So that's what cultivation is all about. That's what this podcast is all about. Cultivate my life, God. Like transform me from the inside out, not from the outside in. What we do within matters more than what we do on the outside. Because if we were to receive everything that we're tilling, we wouldn't be able to manage it wholeheartedly. We wouldn't be able to steward it well because our heart isn't in the right place. That's why people go bankrupt and they lose their mind and they commit suicide because they haven't cultivated their heart. They were busy tilling the ground. They were busy focusing on the resource and what it could provide. So when they lost it, they put all their stock in what they were doing versus how they were living within. There's this book, The Psychology of Money. It talked about how there were two types of men had the same result, but these two men began to invest in the stock market. One guy invested in the stock market, put all of his money into the stocks, and he lost it all. And so he committed suicide. Another guy, he invested his money into the stocks. Everybody dropped out. He stayed in. He became extremely wealthy. But it wasn't good enough for him. His family was set, but he wasn't good enough for him. So he took another risk. He continued to take more and more risks. And then he became bankrupt and lost all of his money. Then he committed suicide. Same result, two different things. What do we see in these scenarios? Well, we see one guy who, because he didn't cultivate his heart, he put all of his stock in what he had and what he was tilling. I'm going to put all my money into this thing. And then you lose it all. And once you lose it all, you feel like you have nothing left because you're not self-aware of what's within. And so he commits suicide because his identity was in what he was tilling. On the other occasion, the other man, he got the bag. He got the resource. He had the money to take care of his family. But greed got in the way. He didn't cultivate that little weed that was growing in his heart. He was greedy. He was never satisfied. And so because of his greed, because of his pride, because of his lack of satisfaction, his lack of contentment, he committed suicide. This is a very important piece in our life. Cultivation is a very, very important piece in our life. Because if we don't get that right, we can easily find ourselves creating idols out of the things that we work for. We can easily find ourselves worshiping the very thing that we feel is going to bring an output in our life. It's going to bring a resource in our life. We'll idolize that thing and we'll work till sun up to sundown to get that very thing that we're working for without acknowledging our heart. We'll negate our family. Our family be put in the back burner and we won't see our kids. We won't see our wife because we're so busy trying to build an empire. We're so busy trying to, I got to get this bread. And then you realize when you get the bread, that bread ain't good enough. So you keep going. And then you keep moving the goalposts. Have you ever seen somebody who moves the goalposts? Oh, once I get this, I'm good. And then they get it. Once I get that other thing, though, I'll be good. I won't be good until I get that other one. They keep moving the goalposts because they're unsatisfied. They're not content. They haven't cultivated their heart. They have too many weeds in there. They haven't broke the ground. They worry about the large pot of land. They worry about the acres. And God said, what about this little area right here? Because this little area, this little area is gonna mess up that whole land that you're thinking about over there. I'm passionate about this, as you can tell. I'm really passionate about it. Like, there's no script to this. For me, I really want to go into this thing, into this podcast, into my coaching, into mentoring. I really want to go into this like with passion and with authority. My word for the year is audacity. I have the audacity to talk about this, and I have the audacity to know that I can help transform your life through the help of God. I know I have the tools and resources to help cultivate your life. I've been through a lot of stages, a lot of seasons in life, from grief to addiction to anxiety to stress to rejection and abandonment to family issues to the loss of my father to suicide to there's a lot of different things, sexual abuse. There's been so many things that's happened in my life that has really helped propel me to be able to talk about what cultivation is. And so it's not like I'm coming to you like I ain't been through nothing. I've been through a lot, y'all. I've been through counseling. I'm in therapy now still because I ain't made it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still working on me. And the things that I've learned in my life, I've learned that I can't get through those things if I do not, number one, ask for help. Number two, figure out ways and tools to help cultivate what's deep down inside of me. Because there's some areas that need to be dug up. There's some areas that need to be broken up. There's some soil in there that needs to be broken up. Because at the end of the day, I'm ready for a harvest, y'all. Like, there's gonna be so many tips throughout this podcast, especially the first season, talking about the different variations of the process of cultivation, from preparing the soil to sowing the seed to fertilization to irrigation to harvesting, and then to threshing, and to storage. So there's a lot of different processes when it comes to cultivation, and we have to be ready for all stages because it is a process. Growth is a process. Lately, I've been into this thing where I'm like, yo, man, I can't get through life comfortably anymore. I've been trying to be comfortable for a long time. I've been trying to live life comfortably. And when I think about the growth process is never comfortable. When the seed hits the ground and when the seed is broken, what comes out of the seed has to break its way through the soil. It has to pop its way out of being underground. That is pressure. When there is dirt holding you down and the growth process begins, you begin to sprout up. That is a process that hurts. That's uncomfortable. Have you ever had somebody putting their weight on you and you try to get up and their weight is on you? That's what it feels like when a seed breaks and something pops out of that seed and begins to grow. It's like there's pressure pressing down on it, but because it's being fertilized and it's being watered, it's being nurtured the right way, it now has the ability, the strength to push its way out of what's pushing it down. That's what growth is. It's uncomfortable. And so I feel like many of us are walking through life thinking that everything has to be comfortable for us. Like when you go to your job, there's nothing comfortable about your job. You don't get to do whatever you want to do. You have, you have deadlines to meet. That's uncomfortable. You gotta be at home, or if you're working remote, or you gotta be on your job on site. That can be uncomfortable. You gotta be in a cubicle all days. For some people, that's extremely uncomfortable. You gotta talk to people you don't really want to talk to. Let's be honest. You gotta have conversations and chit chat with folks that you really don't want to chit chat, but because you want to make sure you get to the next level and you want your money to be good, and you indulge. I'll talk to you. I hate small talk, but I'll talk to you. Know what I mean? You do that kind of stuff. That's uncomfortable. So a lot of us go through life, like raising kids can be uncomfortable. It's a beautiful thing, but let's be real. I mean, today I'm just like, this is extremely uncomfortable. My kids going crazy. I got 3 boys and they all just yelling at the same time. That's uncomfortable, but it's part of their growth. They got to get that out. And so I just feel like when it comes to our heart, when it comes to our mind and our soul, we feel like that ain't something we gotta worry about. That ain't something we gotta work for. But we work for everything else. But we do not strive to work to be self-aware. We don't strive to work to be transparent and to be vulnerable. We don't strive to work to be a better communicator. We don't strive to work to have a better heart, to love better, to understand better, to use wisdom. We ain't trying to cultivate that because we just want to be comfortable. I ain't trying to go to therapy because you want to be comfortable. I just don't feel like I need to talk to nobody about that because it's uncomfortable. You was just working a job, just 8 from 9 to 5. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you was just doing everything in the world you can do to make sure you get money for the week or for the next 2 weeks. For the week after that, if it's a net 60, you trying to do what you can do, even though it's uncomfortable to survive. But you don't want to do little things like therapy and little things like community because it's uncomfortable. That's a cop out and it's lazy. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's lazy. You don't really want to grow, but you can't grow being comfortable. There's no way you can grow. A seed isn't even comfortable. It's on the ground. It's underneath the ground, underneath dirt and soil. That is uncomfortable. Buried. Nothing in life happens in our comfort zone. I look at these athletes, man, pushing their bodies to the limit to be able to sustain through a full season. Guys like LeBron James. I'm not a LeBron dude, but I got to put him in a category because of his longevity. All these baseball players and soccer players, Messi, all these guys, like, they put their bodies through so much pain, so much discomfort to be able to handle the season comfortably. I say that's comfortably, but yeah, usually the off season is more comfortable than when you're in season. And so I think a lot of us rethink that we should be in season 24/7, but there's an off season, and that off season requires some breaking. That off season requires some pressure. I heard when it comes to boxing, like, your off season, you getting beat up, so that when you get in the ring, it feels easier. You know what I mean? Like, I can handle the ring because my off season was hard. And that's how I felt when I tore my Achilles. That's kind of how I felt. I felt that once I went through the physical therapy and I started going to these workouts, I went to this gym and I started training like an athlete. I felt like when I got on the court, when I got back to playing basketball, it felt easier. I'm like, well, my workouts are harder than this. We just running and throwing the ball in the hoop. That's it. My workouts are harder than this, bro. I'm gassed in my workouts. They pushing my body through the limit so that I can handle the game. Too many of us, we don't handle the game right because we ain't went through no off season. We've been too comfortable. And so we get injured in season. And we trying to figure out how to bounce back because we haven't learned to cultivate in the off season. So for me, this is what this is all about. This is what this podcast is all about. Breaking the soil, trying to make sure that we're prepared to handle life, handle everything that comes with it. Because life is great. It's fun. It's amazing. But let's be honest. There's some things in life there's some curveballs that happens in life that can really cause damage in our hearts, man. That can really cause some damage and some sadness, some anger, some frustration. That's what comes with life. That's what comes with the process. But I feel that God has placed me here to help engineer you through those frustrations so that you can see clearly and that you can be self-aware in how to handle those moments when they come. Because I was taught to handle them differently. When my dad passed away when I was 17, when he committed suicide, I was told not to cry, man. I was told, suck it up and keep going. 3 days later, I'm at my senior prom. I wasn't supposed to be there, but that's kind of how I was told to cope. Keep going, don't feel it. I realized over time, especially when I got married, that don't work. That does not work. You can't just not grieve. You can't just mask the pain and find other coping mechanisms. No, you're going to have to sit in that. You're going to have to sit in those feelings. You're going to have to feel the pain. And that's part of growth, to feel that pressure so that you can grow. So this is the intro to the Cultivate podcast, the first season of it. This is the intro. I feel like this is a good synopsis, a good overview of what we're going to be talking about and how this podcast is going to really impact your life. I really hope that I brought some good gems, and how to cultivate and what it means to cultivate, the definition of cultivation. And I hope I brought light to maybe for those who've been doing a lot of tilling, who've been doing a lot of working, but haven't even thought about your heart. I hope that I brought light to what you should be doing and how to get out of that mode of constantly tilling, but try to refocus on what's going on in here in your heart. so that you can be able to handle the harvest, man. You can't, yeah. I want us to be able to handle the harvest. I want us to be able to handle it well, and to steward it well. And so, thank y'all for listening to the first episode of the Cultivate podcast. And if you enjoyed it thus far, y'all already know what to do: subscribe, comment, like, review. But I'm really excited to really get down to the nitty gritty of the Cultivate podcast. So that's episode 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I'm gonna try to keep these podcasts between 30 to 45 minutes. I may have some guests on the show as well. But I hope you all have a great, wonderful day. And if you're driving, I pray that you get to your destination safely. If you're at home chilling, if you're with your family listening, I'm praying that I drop some nuggets in you that'll help motivate you to do more and to do better and to be better. So that's my whole goal. So for all my cultivators out there, I love y'all. We out. Peace.